Thank you very much for joining me. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. Thank you for your trust as we get closer to the hurricane season. Again, this channel is I just want to give you the facts. We'll track things storm by storm. I know there's a lot of chatter out there about a super powerful hurricane season. Yeah, I do believe there's going to be above average tropical storms and hurricanes, but that does not necessarily mean one is going to slam into us. Tracking these things, where they go, that's a whole different kind of a ball game, if you will. That's a whole different thing, and I'll dive into that for you. Now, what's going on right now, I want to get into the pattern and what I'm seeing looking ahead. And you know, forecasting the weather a few days in advance is tough. Of course, out in time a little bit tougher, but you can see the patterns out in time. And one thing I've been noting in the Eastern Pacific, that blue shading right in there, that's a sign that we've been seeing some of the water temperatures trending down. And that's a sign we are getting into a La Nina pattern. So we had El Nino. El Ninos don't typically last too long. They last about 9 to 12 months. La Nina can last a few years. Usually there's that neutral period in between, but this time we're just going to shoot right into a La Nina. So where we are right now, and this is actually way back about a year ago, we were trending into El Nino, and where we are now, again, we're going from El Nino quickly into La Nina. That's these kind of squiggly lines here. And one of the issues is June, July, August, October, September, October, is that not only are we trending into a La Nina, but it looks like a stronger La Nina, which means just things are kind of enhanced, which means there would be a better chance, a higher chance. I don't like to use the word better because we don't need a hurricane, but there would be a higher chance of more hurricanes and more tropical storms. The hurricane season itself starts June 1st. In May, there's been a few hurricanes on record, several tropical storms on record, and if there's a season where we could get a kind of a preseason storm, it would be this year, and I'll show you why in just a second. Now, the length of the season, when they started doing this years ago, the hurricane season ran June 1st to October 31st, but then it was extended to November 15th, and since 1965, with the satellites that we have out there, the recon mission, the reconnaissance planes that go into these things, well, we could kind of see more, and the hurricane season was extended June 1st to November 30th. So that is the hurricane season. 6 months we are dealing with that. Now, I mentioned we're going into a La Nina. Now, El Nino, we had that last year. El Nino typically is a very good thing for the hurricane season. It usually means less hurricanes. That's because there's more wind shear. So as the hurricanes come across, winds from the opposite direction come and kind of knock off the building thunderstorms, so they can't really build up. And that's why we usually get less hurricanes in an El Nino season. And last year, a lot of the forecasts, because of El Nino, were saying it's going to be a below average season. But I did this forecast last year for you as well, and I actually went against that, and I said it was going to be an above average season even though we have El Nino, because there's so many other factors. And last year, the water was so warm, and the water kind of balanced out El Nino, and yeah, it was an above average season. We had a ton of storms, over 20 storms. It was one of, or 20 storms, I think. It was one of the most active seasons on record. Now, La Nina, on the flip side, that usually is kind of worse news. That means less wind shear, and that would mean more hurricanes. But as I just mentioned with El Nino, sometimes you get other ingredients that come into play. And that's why I've been cautioning. While a lot of folks are saying, hey, a super scary hurricane season is coming up, let's kind of wait and see together. Let's see what happens. There's a lot of things out there. We're going to be tracking the water temperatures, the dry air, the dust, so many different factors. Now, as we go throughout the hurricane season, again, starting June 1st, the real peak of it is August, September into October. The peak of the season right around September 10th, September 11th. The water temperatures are usually very warm then. Now, right now, looking at the water temperatures the last few days, they've been roughly in the Caribbean, 27 to 28 degrees Celsius. That's about 81 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. That in itself is conducive for development. We're running above average with the water temperatures, so that also is not necessarily a good thing. We're going to start off warm, and that's why I was mentioning in May, when the conditions above the water become more conducive for development, with water temperatures like this, we may see a storm develop before the season starts, and that's why I've been talking a little bit more about the hurricane season, because things may kick off a little bit sooner, in which we'd be tracking things together. Now, each season, there's about 55 to 65 55 tropical waves. Those are the kind of impulses, the showers and storms that build up in Africa and come off the coast and move across the Atlantic basin. And that usually starts in May. Usually they don't do a whole lot early in the season, but as the water warms, we start to get more storms. But hurricane season again ends November 30th. So yeah, there's so much to track, but we don't get 55 to 65 hurricanes a season. Again, only some of them do develop. Now, with the water temperatures, one of the concerns though this season will be rapid intensification. You look at the hurricane scale, again, you have the categories here and category 3 or greater. Those are the major hurricanes, and I do believe this year there's a better chance of major hurricanes. What does develop could be kind of, it could be extra strong because those water temperatures are starting above average, and I expect them to be very warm throughout the season. It's not just the water temperature though. They're always warm in the summer. It is the depth of the warm water. That's called the heat content. So as a storm moves across the water and churns up the water, more warm water comes up and feeds it instead of that cool water. So the heat content will be substantial this season, and that's why that may lend itself to getting some stronger storms. Now, longer term projections, this is out in time. This is June, and you see the green here. This means above average moisture. So it's saying, hey, there's not going to be a lot of dry air out there. Where you see the yellow shading, that would be below average moisture. So this here, not necessarily a good thing. It would be a good thing in the sense a lot of us need to get some rain. I mean, we rely on that. Well water, drinking water, filling up the cisterns for crops, cattle, all that sort of thing. Of course, we need water. We know that. So again, if we get a couple weak systems, maybe that could be a good thing. But in June, this green and even blue shading, that means above average moisture out there. So that is an ingredient for things to develop. Look at July, not much changes. Above average moisture and even well above average moisture in the atmosphere in the month, or in the Caribbean in the month of July. Then we get into August and even over toward the Gulf of Mexico, back through the Bahamas, east coast of the US, above average moisture. So that is not ideal. And I've been watching this for months now. And again, that trend has been staying the same, trending to a La Niña, warm water temperatures, having a lot of moisture around. That's kind of been holding. But again, there's going to be other ingredients. September, same thing, a little bit of a dip off. You start to get some fronts as you get into September, but still generally above average moisture in the Atlantic Basin. The Atlantic Basin, including the Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic Ocean, and the Caribbean. So as far as Atlantic activity goes, I mentioned the heart of the season. That is August, September, and October. 84% of all named systems happen in just those 3 months. So again, that is a big focus as we get into the season. All right, on the flip side of things, sometimes you get some wrinkles. Sometimes you have a La Niña season, ingredients are in place, but then there's another ingredient that could really change things. There's a few out there that could really change things. One would be what we're seeing now, and that is a lot of the dry air and dust around. I mentioned there's going to be a lot of moisture, but sometimes the dust could be higher than usual that comes off the coast of Africa. That could change the season, and that's why I want to caution, while you see these scary forecasts out there, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens with the dust. Another ingredient that could really change things would be volcanic ash out there. If there's a big eruption somewhere in the world, that could really limit the hurricane season. So there's plenty to watch as we go throughout the season. Now, here's the list of names for the Atlantic Basin: Alberto, Beryl, Chris, Debbie, Ernesto, Francine, Gordon. Hopefully we don't get too far down the list, but I do believe we will get pretty far down the list this year. Now, sometimes you hear different lists and you're like, hey, are we out of order? Did I miss a storm? Well, the Eastern Pacific, that has a different list of names. Now, the Eastern Pacific, usually when the Atlantic Basin is more active, the Eastern Pacific is less active. So the forecast for the Eastern Pacific, which I'll be watching for you as well, should be a little bit less active than normal. But again, we'll see. All right, so the hurricane season, as we go through it, La Niña, that means less wind shear. Usually that means more storms. And we have the sea surface temperatures, which are hot. That usually also means more storms. So I do expect it to be very active. But I'm not talking about where the storms are going to go. What I do during the season is I watch the pattern set up. Are there some fronts well to the north? Are we seeing some of the dust? Is the Bermuda high pressure strong? Is it weak? Where exactly is it? So again, it really depends on the steering conditions kind of each month on where things may end up and if something is going to hit us. On average, there are 14 named storms, and this goes back a few decades. 14 named storms in a season. So that's tropical storms or hurricanes. 7 of those on average become hurricanes, and 3 of those major hurricanes, category 3 hurricanes. So again, I'm going to show you this, but please take it with a grain of salt, because I do not like when folks spread fear, because our livelihood is at stake. Your homes, your businesses, just how you live day to day when it comes to hurricanes. This is my forecast for the upcoming season. 22 named storms, and all of this is above average, and I showed you why. Again, La Niña, warm water temps, increased moisture. 9 of those should become hurricanes, and 5 of those becoming major hurricanes. That's a bigger concern for me, I think, as we go throughout the season. Even if the forecast changes, whatever, would be rapidly intensifying storms. But I do expect above average named storms as we go throughout the season, above average hurricanes, but it is a wait and see where things go. Hopefully everything stays out to sea, stays safely away, and I promise to you, that is my promise to you, is safety number one, that I will do my best to be on top of that for you as we get into the upcoming hurricane season. So thank you for being part of this channel, subscribing, liking the videos, leaving the comments. You keep me going. You are my energy. I hope you stay safe and have a good day ahead.